Well, visual artists from all over Mount Alexander Shire will be opening their studio doors this weekend and next for Arts Open 2018. That's where we, the public, get the unique opportunity to meet the artists of the region and have a sticky beak into their workspaces. This includes a group of Newstead artists, one of whom is she's recently moved there in the last 2 years from Castlemaine to Newstead, and people in Central Victoria might be familiar with her work. Chloe Neath created some amazing drawings for the Baby Farmer project last year. You might be familiar with those. She's also shown her portraits around various local venues over the last few years. She joins me in the studio this morning. Welcome.
Thanks, Jo.
Thanks for coming in. Now, for those who aren't familiar, perhaps in the western part of our listening area, who might not have heard much about the Baby Farmer, explain it to us, because it was quite an unusual project.
It was. Something we put together that we'd never really heard of before. We decided to do a play. We also then decided to use that story to create a book. Nick Ravenswood, who performed and also wrote the story, approached me and asked me if I'd like to illustrate the book. So that's what we did. Over 2 years, we worked very hard, and I spent about 500 hours in the studio creating 30 drawings for the Baby Farmer book.
And the Baby Farm, the story itself was quite dark.
Yes, it's very spooky, yes.
It's a sort of Victorian era kind of the way that children were sort of treated back then.
Yeah, basically it was, the Baby Farmer was about babies that got minded and they weren't treated very well, basically. They weren't treated very well by baby farmers and often died or.
So the parents had to both sort of work very hard or one parent if there was only one around.
Exactly.
And so they were basically childcare for that era, but it was really, really dodgy.
Childcare, exactly.
That's right. And the images for this were so confronting and scary in some places. So
we tried to. The story obviously is quite intense, but we tried to create images that had a bit of mystery about them. So it's not just all blood and gore.
Yes.
Think a little bit like Hitchcock.
Yeah.
That it's about what's implied. So we tried to keep the drawing still beautiful, but also expressing the spooky mystery of the story. Yeah, quite unsettling.
And that must have been very different for you as well, sort of creating a book, because all your work is on mostly paper? Yeah.
Usually on brown paper. The charcoal on the brown paper gives it a vintage feel, so that fitted really well with this story. So coming up with compositions that captured the story all the way through, those images just started popping in my head as soon as I started reading the words. And, put together those images to accurately tell that story.
And the portraits, we're going to talk about those today in particular because, we've spoken to you about the Baby Farmer before on Central Victorian Radio.
Yeah.
But these are just glorious. They're almost glowing. I put some examples on the Facebook page, ABC Central Victoria's Facebook page, if people want to go and have a look at them. But this is also charcoal work?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put some gold leaf in there at times as well. That's something that I did for one of my solo exhibitions. I had a series of gold leaf and a few silver leaf in there mixed in. But there's something about the charcoal on the brown paper that to me brings life to these portraits. Grey lead on white paper is beautiful, but for me the charcoal just gives it a glow. It's almost like a lifelike feel to it when you're looking at the faces. And the more that I've drawn, it just has gone into that photorealism realm. So with that warmth of the charcoal on the paper, they really sort of, the images and the faces start to look very real and lifelike.
Almost are like sort of old photographs. Like you look back into some old photo albums at home or something and they've slightly tinged or sepia toned.
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you like charcoal so much? What do you get from that?
I think it surprised me when I went back. It was about 6 years ago when I started using it again. I'd always been, cautious with charcoal because it can be really messy, as we know, most of us that have had a go. But the more that I used it and the more I was able to figure out how to get some precision with it, it's a satisfying thing for me to work with. I really enjoy that. And, when you combine that with faces, I really enjoy drawing faces. And so the combination of the two I just find really satisfying.
How do you find the faces?
It's a bit random. I always have business cards on me, basically, so that if I go to a festival or I'm walking down the street and I see a face that catches my attention, I'll just go up and have a chat and say, hi, I'm an artist and I really like, your face. I think it's really interesting. Would you be interested in me taking photos so I can do a drawing? And I haven't actually had anyone say no yet, which is good.
So you work from a photograph of that person?
Yeah, definitely. Blow it up kind of section by section so that I can really see the detail and just steadily work my way through. We
were talking sort of about photorealism there, and one of your statements is that you aim to be accurate and capture and evoke the life and experience of the person in the portrait. Why is accuracy important? Because I would have thought being an artist, you have a lot of, you can play around with the images quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I think at this stage, the accuracy is what gives it the realism, and so that's sort of the satisfaction of it is like, okay, I've captured that eye, I've captured that tone of skin, even though it's a flat cheek, it still looks real. I can see the flesh in it, so I'm really enjoying that. But there's so many things, so many directions you could go, and because I've just finished the book, I'm starting some new drawings now and experimenting a little bit with the backgrounds and what I can do with them. I like Art Nouveau. I've been looking at old 70s music posters with these colours. So it could head in a very different direction.
They are very detailed, though.
Yes.
So you must spend a long time getting it just perfect how you want it to be.
I do. Look, they probably average between maybe 40 to 60 hours, something like that, for each portrait. So they do take a while,
And, we talked about using charcoal and gold leaf and things like that. Are you always sort of looking for new techniques and new ways of doing things, or are you pretty happy with using the materials that you have as you are? Sort of?
I think the book was great in that because I had to create settings and backgrounds, it taught me a lot about how to create different textures. I had to create a Hessian hood for Winifred before she goes to the gallows. And a few people might have heard this before, but I found some fly screen wire. A friend suggested it and patted charcoal on, and then all of a sudden it looked like Hessian. So you have to find new techniques all the time, and that's good because it keeps it interesting, keeps it challenging. But like I said, I'm looking into bringing colour in there as well now a little bit more. So that's really exciting to me.
And another interesting thing that you do, I notice on your website, is that you'll take photos of the progress of the work that you're doing, and people can see how you sort of go about how you do things. There's one in particular where it was the face is it's quite blank to start with, and slowly the outlines appear, but it's not until the eyes are drawn where you think, oh, that face that's a face.
Yeah, now it's coming to life.
Yeah.
Look, most of the time I'll start with the eyes, because if you can't get the eyes right, the rest of the picture doesn't flow as easily to me. So that's usually my first point of call, is make sure I capture those eyes and there's life in them. Yeah. And then it seems to flow on from there. Yeah.
Excellent. So the whole idea of Arts Open and having the Newstead studios sort of all open as well is to give the public an insight into how you work as an artist. So I'm going to ask you to explain what your studio looks like. What's the setup?
Well, I've been busy over the last we have been busy over the last couple of weekends setting everything up. It used to be a shed, and then I converted it into a studio space. I skinned it all and put big windows in. So it's quite a large space. It's surprising how much area you need, the more you make art. So there's lots of framed images on the wall at the moment. It looks quite like a gallery. But it's got my easel, it's got my chair, it's got my table with all my drawing stuff on it, and I've got a drawing in progress at the moment, actually, so people can get a sneaky peek at that. Big framing table, and, outside it's trees and birds, and it's a beautiful setting.
You mentioned big windows. How important is the lighting in that environment when you're working? Yeah,
very, very much so. I've been adding more lighting as I go along because it makes a huge difference to be able to see really clearly what you're working on. But, you've got to have big, wide open windows just to bring all the light in as much as possible, yeah.
And what about, you said you can hear the birds and things. Are you a person that needs to have music playing, or do you prefer it to be quiet?
I usually have something really mellow playing. I've been sort of rotating Aretha Franklin lately. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And Johnny Cash is a favourite, so if I don't know what to put on, I always put on Johnny Cash and just have it really mellow in the background. But yeah, it's too quiet without some sort of music. Yeah.
And how much time do you think you spend in there? You probably spend more than you think.
Oh, I wish I could spend more. I work 4 days. I teach art secondary, so I have 3 days away from school. And, I try and get in there every day and spend some time. Quite often, if I decide to have a studio day, I'll go in the morning and just do the whole day and just get lost in there, which is really lovely. Yeah.
And have you always sort of noodled around with art, like even when you were a kid?
I always loved drawing. I inherited that from my mum. She always had an ability to draw really well. And I went to uni and then actually had a break from doing art. And about 6 years ago, I started again. And since then, it's just domino effect. It's just grown and grown and grown. So I'm so happy it's in my life. I find it really, really fulfilling. It makes me really happy. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, people will be able to see you in your studio this weekend and next.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the other artists that from Newstead in particular. You guys sort of have a bit of a gang.
Yeah, it's become like that. It has. Well, the whole event's obviously the Castlemaine region Arts Open, and there's over 90 artists you can see, but over in Newstead, we've got about 12 artists. People might be familiar with Roger McKinley. He's got a fantastic art garden set up there that you can go and see his work, sort of metal construction, beautiful pieces. We have potters. We have people like Chris Johnston and Sarah Koshak. So beautiful ceramics work that you can go and see. There's a huge printmakers exhibition at the Railway Building. So if you pop in there, you can see a whole range of artists in one spot as well. Trevor Prest has, how do you describe that? Almost futuristic metal sculptures. They're just gorgeous. His detail's incredible. Prue McAdam has Red Door Gallery, which is in town. So if you pop in there, you can get the brochures there as well. And also at Dig Cafe, if you want to grab the little brochure there, it's got a map, a guide, and it's got all the artists on it, so a little pocket guide that you can grab.
There's a couple of websites I'll give out in just a moment where you can get those, as well as the wider Mount Alexander Shire, because there'll be studios also open in Castlemaine, Maldon and Tewton as well over the next 2 weekends. And the marketplace in Castlemaine's also a bit of a hub where you can get information and see an exhibition as well. So heaps to do over the next couple of weekends.
So much. If you're looking for something inspiring, whether you're an artist or whether you just enjoy art, there's heaps to go and see, plenty to keep you happy.
Fantastic. All right, so those websites, artsopen.com.au, that's artsopen.com.au, or you can find the Newstead ones at newsteadopenstudios.wordpress.com, newsteadopenstudios.wordpress.com. Chloe, thank you for coming in today and sharing how you work with us.
Thank you very much, Jo.
That's Chloe Neath. You can see her studios around the Newstead area as well, or Sandon in particular, but follow the maps and the information that are on those websites.